the number one prep item that a lot of people overlook, or they think they have a sufficient supply of, you know, that they've got it stored up, they've got it here, they've got it there, they're good to go, right? Do you know what that number one prep is? I'll give you a second to think about it and answer it. Water. Water takes up a huge amount of storage space in your preps. Some people say, well, I've got a well, I've got a pond, I've got a lake, or this or that, right? The average person doesn't have access to that. So they're having to store up, water bottles, things like that with water in it, milk jugs, which I wouldn't recommend now. Milk jugs leak. They're thinner than they used to be. If you're going to store water in used bottles, I would say use like 2-liter Coke bottles or something like that, because they're a thicker plastic. But then you're going to get into people saying, well, then the plastic will leach into the water. So it's just a big deal, right? A lot of people, bleach to purify the water. A lot of people know that I run a Sawyer filter whenever I go hunting. That's what I carry with me. It's on my packs and stuff, on my hydration packs. But these filters do not get out viruses or filter out all the heavy metals. So you're still going to have to boil your water, and honestly, you're going to still have to risk it a little bit with these. This one here was on my hydration pack at deer camp this year, and one night it got cold. One night, the next morning I woke up and I couldn't get water to come through my hydration bladder, and this thing had cracked. Can you see that? It had froze and cracked. Now, of course, the directions tell you, to make sure it doesn't have water in it in freezing temperatures, to make sure it's dried out and things like that. Now, I do flush mine regularly. They send you a thing where you back flush it and everything. I keep it clean. But one night, in a span of about 4 hours, that filter cracked. Now, what would happen if I was in the situation where this is the only filter I had, right? This is all I had to purify water. I'm in trouble. I'm going to run a risk of getting some kind of virus or something and getting sick from it, right? Now, like I said, if you're going to use water that you find, I would recommend boiling it and then running it through a filter, and you're still going to be a little bit at risk, honestly. I'm not going to be one of these on here tell you if you use this, you're going to be 100% fine. Most of these like these do not remove, like the life straws and all that, they do not remove all the heavy metals, and they don't remove viruses. You're going to have people say, well, I got a Berkey. My Berkey does this and does that. Okay, are you going to tote that Berkey on your back out in the woods if you have to get out in the woods in that type of situation? More than likely not. And if you do, how are you going to carry enough filters? That's another thing. Filters, the lifetime of filters. If you're out in the wild, surviving, SHTF has happened, and your filter, you're used to changing it maybe every 90 days, right? If I'm out in that situation, I'm going to be changing my filter a little bit more often, wouldn't you? Because I don't want to risk, letting it go past 30 days. I'm going to change my filter, even though it's rated for X amount of filtrations. If you're cleaning dirty water with it or pulling dirty water through it, it's going to get used. How good are these filters when do they actually test it on stagnant dirty water, or are they testing it on tap water? I'm sure they run tests with it on stagnant, but for me personally, I'm going to boil my water. I'm going to filter it. Now, you can build filters too. Don't get me wrong. You can build filters out of sand, wood charcoal, things like that, right? There's all types of videos on YouTube how to build one of them. The number one key is boiling the water. I don't care where your water's coming from. If you're out in a survival situation, you need to boil that water, no matter what. You need to boil it. So then you're going to have some kind of vessel or something to boil this stuff in, right? You'll see videos of people boiling it in plastic bottles and things like that. I wouldn't tempt that. Not me. Number one, what kind of chemicals is that plastic releasing into the water, right? And then we go back to storing water in plastic. People are scared to do that. But water is the number one prep that eventually, if you run out of it, you're gone. You can have all the ammo in the world, all the food in the world. You're done if you don't have enough water. You're done. And the people that say, well, I got a pond, I got a well. Okay, what if that gets contaminated, right? Something happens and everything gets contaminated. I've showed you videos of the stuff that's getting on vehicles that's coming out of there. That stuff is also landing in the water supply. And if something major happens, what if your water gets contaminated? Eventually, a well will get contaminated if we have a nuclear incident, right? that water. Now, I don't know how long it would take, but because you can't store enough water. I'm just going to tell you, you can't store enough water. You need a way to purify any water you find. You know, rainwater, I would even recommend, if you're one of these people that only uses the rainwater you catch, you still need to boil it and filter it before you consume it. You know, they tell you a gallon of water per person per day. That's the bare minimum. You know, that's not including washing up. It's not including cooking with it. You know, or cleaning your dishes. It's not including that, right? You really need, honestly, this is going to make some people mad because they're going to say I'm an idiot, but you really need 2 to 3 gallons of water a day. That don't sound like much, right? You're like, all right, that's 90 gallons a month. Let's go on the 2 gallons. That's 60 gallons a month, 12 months. What is that? 720 gallons. So I just need a way to store 1,000 gallons and I'm good to go, right? This sounds easy, right? Have you ever seen how much space 1,000 gallons of water takes up? It takes up a lot of space. A lot of space. And then what are you going to do when that runs out? This goes back to where we've talked about people that say, well, I've got solar systems, I'm good to go, you know, I've got batteries. If this thing goes on, if it's full-blown SHTF and nothing's ever coming back, all that stuff is going to break eventually. It's not going to last forever. In fact, they're probably designed to break, so you have to go buy new stuff. Most of us know that. This is not the 1800s where you could go out to a creek in your neighborhood and get you some water, right? It's pretty clean. It's not them days no more. There's too much stuff in the air. There's too much stuff in the water systems. I've told you, where I grew up, there were springs all around us. You could walk 50 feet that way, there was a spring. And there was even a spring house type situation down at the bottom of the spring. And then you go over here, well, I said bottom, but they were one come down the hill and another one come out of another hill, and it was there. You could go 100 yards that way, there was a spring. There was springs all around us, is what I'm trying to say. Well, then people started buying property around us, and guess what they did? They don't care about them springs. They put septic systems right on top of the springs. There is one house built above my mom and dad's that is right on top of a head of a spring. Right on top of it. And of course it dried the spring up, right? But can you imagine all that water they're getting all the time? Because they have problems with their septic backing up all the time. A lot of people don't realize what a spring is anymore. But you cannot store enough water. So you're going to need a way to filter it, boil it. You got to sanitize this water before you drink it. You know, I'm lucky. We're not in no SHTF situation when I go hunting. So I may fill my camel pack up with you know, tap water, or I carry, you know, bottled water. People make fun of me because the 40 packs that you can buy at Walmart or the dollar store or whatever, I drink that much water in 2 days. That's how much water I drink. I don't know why I drink that much, but that's how much I drink. I drink a 40 pack of water in 2 days. I don't know why. I used to drink beer like that, and then when I quit drinking, I guess I just switched it to water, and now I drink water like that. And it's been that way for about 10 years now. But can you store enough water for indefinite long-term survival? The average person, no. You can't. You cannot do it. Can you get filters and ways to boil the water and all? Yes, you can do that right now, where you can long-term, right, survive if you have access to the water. Like I said, your ponds and stuff, they're going to get contaminated if it's a major event. What if a drought comes, right? A drought comes, it dries up the springs in your area. We have a river out here on the mountain that I have seen dry completely up in the last 15 years. Completely up. No water in it. Major river for our area, not for y'all. But springs dry up all the time around here. Once they dry up, sometimes they don't come back. Ponds, the last couple of summers, the ponds have just been dried up. You know, you might have a little bit of water in them, but it's not full. And it takes months and months to fill them back up. There's a pond up here that last summer it went dry, and the summer before that it went dry. Now it's completely full up to the brim, right? But guess what? If we don't get no rain in the summer to keep it up, it's going to dry it up. And that pond is a spring-fed pond. So that's telling me that spring-fed pond, a lot of people don't know the difference in this. You have wet weather springs and you have all-year springs, where water runs all years. Wet weather springs, you can see them when you're out. You know, water will be shooting up out of the ground with a little hole like that, and water will be coming out of it. That's a wet weather spring. What you need is a all-season spring, right? That spring is going to run year-round. In my area, it's hard to find them. Used to, you could find them everywhere. Now they're gone and dried up. The water table has dropped in our area. But how much water does it take? I've told you. a minimum, one person, you're looking at 700 gallons a year. A lot of people say that's not true. You only need 1 gallon. You're not taking into consideration that you need to clean your dishes. You know, you need to wash up every now and then. You got wet wipes, that's great. Use wet wipes, right? But like MD Creekmore the other day, you don't want to be stinking like that, right? You kind of want to clean yourself up every now and then. At deer camp in the winter, you know, I'll tell you, I take a bath about once a week. Why? Because when it's cold, I don't sweat. Now, when it gets above 60 degrees, I'm pouring sweat. I'm looking like, you know, I've been in a river, is the way I look. Now, in the wintertime, I can get away with it, but in the summer, you can't. Or anytime, for me, the temperature gets above 60, you can't get away with that. And plus, at deer camp, I don't have to worry about stinking because there ain't many people around me, right? And whoever is around me, they've probably been there that long, they stink too. But you got to stay clean too. But here's the thing: if you're not out here, you know, you've got to stay clean to protect yourself. When you're like, what's that mean? You need to wash your hands every now and then. You're an adult. If you're watching this video, you know you need to wash your hands every now and then, right? You got to clean up. You process an animal, you're gonna have all kind of stuff all over. You need to clean your hands up, right? It's just the way it is. You know, you can catch stuff through your hands. We're not going to get into that because I'm not a doctor, but you get what I'm saying. So, minimum 700 gallons of water per person per year. And a way to filter that water, boil that water, sanitize the water, right? Of course, people say you can use chlorine bleach, pool shock, and things like that. There's other videos on YouTube you can go watch for that. You know, filters, these are good for just everyday type use, you know, like if you're filling up something that the water source is not really questionable. But if you're out on a trail or something, you need a way to boil the water first, then put it through your filter, and you're still going to run a little bit of a risk that, hey, you can still catch something, right? So, guys, water is the biggest prep item that, number one, most people don't have room to store it. Number two, you cannot store enough of it indefinitely. There's no way for the average person. There's no way they can store that much indefinitely. So I would be looking into filters. I'm not going to recommend any filters. You know, a lot of channels on here, they recommend the Berkey. I myself don't see a point of paying that much money for a filter, and then you got the cost of the filters that go inside it. You know, you're going to be several $1,000s in the hole once you get this filter and a couple years worth of filters to put in it. That's your choice. If you got one, great. I'm not going to recommend a filter because I haven't worked with any of these companies. I just use what, you know, the Sawyer, it filters out a lot more water than the Live Straw. It's what supposedly lasts longer. So that's why I use a Sawyer filter. You know, if I'm having to use water that I'm collecting from rain or something like that, I am going to boil the water before I put it in my CamelBak and before I run it through this filter. This filter did crack and break one night with freezing weather. It cracked right down the seam, you know, and it wasn't froze because I drank out of it before I went to bed. And when I woke up maybe a couple hours later to get up to go hunting, it was frozen busted. So these will freeze pretty easily. Now, of course, that night it was cold, you know, and I thought I had it secured enough. I thought I had it, you know, I had a blanket wrapped over my CamelBak and it was sitting on my storage box. Obviously, that wasn't good enough. It froze and busted it. But I learned a lesson, right? Make sure that filter is dry before you go to bed in cold weather, because if I was dependent on this to pretty much have me drinking water, I would have been screwed. I would have been screwed because I didn't have another filter with me, you know. So there's the video. Let me know what you think on it. You know, do you think you've got enough water stored up? Do you agree that you need ways to filter this water, purify it? Excuse me. It gets to the point where you're like, this is a lot of water. Let me know your thoughts on this. Keep your head on a swivel. Be aware of your surroundings at all times. Protect yourself and your family at all times. At that moment, you're the only person that can do it. Stay safe. Keep prepping. And remember, these filters will freeze and bust. Stay safe.